Welcome back, GRD 121 Computer Graphics, Fall 2020 to PS5 White Farm, Part 2 that we're working on. And we just put the girl in the wagon on the road here, and we worked on our layer mask. And one other thing I'm going to do with the girl in the wagon, this isn't that essential to do, but what I am going to do is just adjust her levels a little bit by making sure I'm on the image, not the mask, the image. I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, Levels, and just tweak the midtones a little. Right here, I'm just going to darken the midtones by moving them to the right, just a little bit. I'll put them on and off. There's now, there's before, after, just to darken things up just a little bit of the midtones, not the darks or anything else, just a little bit. So I'm just moving that to the right just slightly. And it looks a little bit better, blends in a little bit with the background, and I'll hit OK. And then that's pretty much all I need to do with her. Now, another thing I could do, because she is very bright and has bright clothes on, and I have her image selected, I could go to Image, Adjustments, Hue Saturation, and I could just desaturate it ever so slightly, just to tone down the color. Now, I don't want to make it black and white, but just a little bit, because it's a very kind of nostalgic looking background, and to have these, really super bright clothes kind of takes something away. So I'm going to turn it down just a little. I think just looks a little bit better. Here's before, after. It just takes down that electric color. Just looks a little bit more natural. If you want to find a balance in there, looks like -34 or something like that. -35 looks good. So I'm just going to do that. So just a little levels adjustment of the midtones and then turning down the saturation just a little bit. And that's all that should need. Now, the next thing I'm going to do before we clone, now cloning is kind of an exercise on its own. So we can focus on cloning a little bit later. One other thing I'm going to do, since we were talking about masks here, I don't think we did this yet. So what I'm going to do is go back to my Warren. And of course, I'm logged out. I'm going to close up Girl in the Wagon because I don't need that anymore. And I'm going to go down in coursework and go back into White Farm again. And I'm going to look for kids. And here's a picture of kids. And I'm going to right click, copy image. And go back to Photopea and make sure you're on Remove Tool. And I'm going to make a little selection. We're going to make a little kind of little snapshot looking thing. We'll put here, we'll put that there. And I'll just make a selection with the marquee tool. And I haven't done this in Photopea, but let's see if this works. We should do something called paste into. Do they have paste into? A paste special? All right, let's just do this. I guess we don't have paste into. Okay, it looks like Photopea doesn't have paste into. What I was trying to do was do paste into and actually make that be a mask all at once. So we'll just have to do it another way. We'll just have to do edit paste, and we're just going to paste that image, and there it is. And I'm just going to make the same selection. I'm just going to make a selection like this, just a small selection. And I'm on that layer, and I could rename my layer kids. And I have that selection on that layer. So I'm on the kids layer, and I just have a little rectangular selection. And I'm going to go to Layer, Raster Mask, and choose Reveal Selection. And you might say, well, that doesn't look very good. But if I go here and I uncheck this little lock thing, that keeps the mask and the image separate. That means I can click on the image, take my Move tool, and scale it. And make sure you have your transform handles. And you might say, well, where are you going with this? Well, what I want to do, and I have to kind of zoom out a little bit so I can see everything. I actually want to zoom my image so it shows up in that little area there. So that becomes like a little window. Picture that being a little window. And that's where my image of my kids is going to be. They're going to show there. These are my kids when they were young. So I'm just going to move them in there. Then I could zoom in. And the whole idea when you use this method, and even in Photoshop when you use paste into, we just had to take an extra step. But paste into just makes the mask all at once. We just had to do it manually. So I'm going to put the kids in there, in that little area. Now we could have just scaled them and cropped them and all that, but this way you can kind of move it around a little bit. And notice that if it's not linked, you can move this around. So I'm moving the image around, and I'm just putting them in there, and I'm just making them like a little frame there. And we can move this whole thing. It doesn't have to stay there. So I'm going to keep it there for now. And that looks pretty good. So I'm going to hit enter. And then with this picture of the kids, I'm going to go to Image Adjustments, Shadows, Highlights, because they definitely have a lot of shadows in there. And probably 50 is good. If I look at before and after, it'll get rid of all those dark shadows in their clothes. And then I'll even go to Image Adjustments, Levels, and probably brighten them up a little. There's not a lot of whites other than the reflection in the pond. So I'll kind of just brighten them up just a little, maybe 240, something like that, and hit OK. And because it's a little tiny picture here, I might even go to Filter, Sharpen, Unsharp mask. And I used to do threshold 0, radius somewhere around like 1 pixel, and this somewhere around like 50%, just to get a little pop because it's kind of a small image. So you can do the before after. It should just get a little bit of pop, and I'll hit OK. Now that I want them to move together, then I could go back and just click right in between here, and it'll link them. Now the mask and the image will move together, so that way I can rotate it, I can do what I want. And what I'm going to do first is just go to Layer, Layer Style, and I'm going to put a border on it, or a stroke, and move this aside. And it always shows up red first, and I'm going to click on where it has red and make sure that's white and hit OK. And I'm going to make this thicker. For some reason, and Photoshop does this too, when it's on the outside, it makes a round corner. So you have to put it on the inside. And then I'm going to make it come down. Same thing would happen in Photoshop. It takes away the corners on it when you do it on the outside. Let's see what center does. Center still rounds it. That's weird. I don't know why it does that, but I'm just going to put the little white border like a snapshot. Maybe 8 pixels looks pretty good. And then I'm also going to put a drop shadow on there. And I'm going to uncheck global light. And I like it kind of down to the right. And whatever this is right now looks pretty good. Opacity on 50% looks pretty good. I don't need much distance. I can increase the size a little bit. We'll increase the blur. But that looks pretty good. So I put a drop shadow and a stroke on there. That way if I want to rotate it, this thing, let me hit enter here. If I want to rotate this, let me zoom out. There we go. I was missing those little corners, so I'm just going to rotate this just a little bit and just put the rest of the people there, and that looks okay. And that's it. That's all I'm going to do with the kids. And as long as I'm working on masks, I'll do one more thing with the masks, and then we'll finish up with some cloning and some text on it. Before I get to the cloning, what I'll do is I'll look for the abominable snowman, if I can spell that, abominable, and I'll go to images. This one's like 260, so some of these are really low resolution. This one's nice resolution, although it's going to miss part of them. His arm's cut off there, but let's see what we can do with this one. I'm gonna copy this image, and I'm gonna go back here, and I'm gonna paste it. And it's really big, so I'll make it smaller, and I'll just put snowman, and I'm gonna turn the opacity down. You might say why? Because I want to see how he looks with the background. And actually, what would be a good idea, since this is cut off here and this isn't, I think I'm gonna flip them. So you could just flip it manually. You could just do that. There is a flip tool you could use, but I'm just going to flip them like that and put them behind there. So that way it doesn't matter if his arm's cut off. See how clever that was to think of that? And I'll make them a little bit bigger, and I'll hit enter. And I'll turn off his transform controls. Now, I'm keeping his opacity down like 50%. I'm going to zoom in up here so I could work on this. Now, this is going to be really simple. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my lasso and hold down and get the polygonal lasso. And I'm just going to start here, and I'm going to click and kind of just click over the barn stuff and make sure I get around here. And I'm going to go over here, and I'm just going to click and finish up down here. And it's making a selection. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to reveal that selection with a mask. I'm going to go Layer, Raster Mask, Reveal Selection, and you can see what it did. Now the building is covering up where he's at. So if I put him back at 100%, you can see he's covered up by the building. Now all that I have to do now is work on the mask, and remember to just take my paintbrush and paint with black and just go around him. So I'll make my brush real big because he's furry, and make sure the softness is kind of down. And what I'll do is I'll just paint on the mask. Check my opacity here. I want my opacity back to 100%. So if it doesn't look right, just go back and change it. This is easy enough just to do by hand. And I might even make it softer, like around 50% as far as the softness of the brush. Except when I go around the barn here a little bit, you might not notice that. And if I take away some of his arm, that's okay. Now, here's a case where if there was a lot of hair that you're working on, you might even want to turn down the opacity of the brush when you do that. And I'm just kind of clicking in here. Doesn't have to be perfect. It's just an abominable snowman. But I might want to zoom in a little bit, make my brush smaller, and just kind of go around him a little bit. I'm doing bigger stuff first. Sometimes you might do smaller stuff and then come back and do bigger stuff. I'm doing some of the bigger stuff, and then I'm going to kind of tweak in a little bit. Now this is an area where you might want to take down the opacity and make your brush a little bit bigger. Click off of there, make your brush a little bit bigger with the opacity down. And now if you go over this, it's not getting rid of everything 100%. And I'm just kind of clicking, going in there anywhere just to get rid of that kind of greenish background stuff. Doesn't matter if there's a little bit there, but I'm just kind of clicking to get rid of some of that stuff. And there's tools we could use to get rid of some of the green if we needed to, but for the sake of making this a little bit faster, I'm not going to worry too much about the green. I'm just going to erase as much as I can. We could use color balance and some other things to kind of select the green and remove the green a little bit, but for what we're doing now, this will be fine. Some green under his arm there. And that looks pretty good. And if you were concerned about it, you could go on the image and you could go to image, adjustments, color balance, and you could maybe try to take away the green a little bit. Like just kind of switch it to the other direction and add a little blue. I don't know if I'd add any red. Actually, that looks pretty good. So taking down the green, adding blue in color balance kind of helps that. Let me take the red down a little bit. That looks better. Took away some of the green. So that's good. So now we have the abominable snowman, and we're going to do some cloning. So I think for the last part 3, we'll do the happy holidays, and we're just going to clone out some of this stuff. We're going to take out the poles, we're going to do some cloning, and we're just going to put our little message, our little card message, and then maybe we'll put some snowflakes on by using a custom brush. So if you're working in Google Drive, just do File, Save, Google Drive, and save everything you have. And if you're not working in Google Drive, this would be a good time to delete your PSD in your downloads and download it again by doing File Save as PSD. And again, I'll see you back here with part 3 for some cloning work and a little bit of text work and a little bit of snow.